On March 23, 2018, a sweltering Friday typical of autumn in Recife, 32-year-old Mariana Coelho dos Santos vanished without a trace. She was last seen leaving her apartment in the upscale Boa Viagem neighborhood, in the southern zone of Recife, Pernambuco. What made the case all the more intriguing was a detail from just 48 hours earlier. Mariana had been caught at a local motel with Ricardo Mendonça, the husband of her best friend and colleague, Fernanda Mendonça. Mariana, a business administration graduate from the Federal University of Pernambuco, worked as a financial manager at a multinational tech firm. Childless, she lived alone in a 7th-floor middle-class apartment in a building with 24-hour security. Known for her outgoing and determined personality, she maintained a structured routine of work, gym, and gatherings with a close circle of friends. According to the building's doorman, Joaquim Silva, a 15-year veteran of the post, Mariana left her home at 7:37 p.m., dressed in dark jeans, a white blouse, and mid-heel shoes. She carried only a small black handbag. He told authorities she seemed nervous, repeatedly glancing from side to side as she waited for the elevator. She was usually so friendly, always said hello to everyone. That night, she barely looked up, he stated. The building's security cameras recorded her exit. She didn't call for a taxi or a ride-sharing service at the front desk, as she often did. Instead, she simply walked along the sidewalk toward Boa Viagem Avenue, turned the corner and disappeared from the view of any surveillance system. Her silver Honda Civic remained untouched in the building's garage. The alarm was raised 48 hours later on Sunday night when her younger sister, Mariana Coelho, couldn't reach her by phone. Worried by the unusual silence, the sisters spoke daily. Carolina went to Mariana's apartment. Inside, everything was in perfect order, no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. Mariana's phone was missing, but its charger was still plugged in by the bed. Her passport and personal documents were tucked away in a desk drawer. Mariana would never be out of touch for this long, a visibly distraught Carolina told the police. She's extremely responsible. Something terrible has happened to my sister. Mariana's disappearance occurred in a particularly volatile context. On the preceding Wednesday, March 21st, she had been photographed entering a motel in the northern zone of Recife with Ricardo Mendonça. The photos, taken by a private investigator hired by a suspicious Fernanda, were sent directly to her phone. That same afternoon, around 2:30 p.m., an intense confrontation erupted at their office. Witnesses described a deeply distraught Fernanda confronting Mariana in the middle of the workspace, publicly exposing the affair. Security had to intervene when the argument escalated into a physical assault, with Fernanda attempting to attack Mariana. It was a terrible scene, recounted Amanda Gomes, an analyst who witnessed the event. Fernanda was screaming that Mariana had destroyed her life, her marriage. She said she would pay dearly for it. Mariana didn't fight back. She just wept and begged for forgiveness. The initial search focused on places Mariana frequented, but preliminary checks showed no activity on her credit cards or bank account. Her cell phone had been turned off since Friday night, making a GPS trace impossible. The Pernambuco Specialized Division for Missing Persons took the case, with Delegate Ronaldo Meireles leading the investigation. "We are treating this case with the highest priority, considering the sensitive circumstances," he stated in a press conference. As investigators delved into the 72 hours before Mariana vanished, the case grew more complex. Court-authorized access to her text messages revealed a disturbing picture. In the 48 hours between the office confrontation and her disappearance, Mariana had received dozens of threatening messages from unknown numbers. "You're going to pay for what you did," read one. "People like you don't deserve to live in peace," said another. received just 4 hours before she was last seen. Meanwhile, her messages with Ricardo Mendonça painted a picture of a turbulent relationship. "I need to see you today. Everything is falling apart," Mariana wrote on Thursday. Ricardo's reply was curt. "Impossible. Fernanda won't leave my side for a minute. We need to take a break." Mariana's final message to him, sent at 3:22 p.m. on Friday, went unanswered. "I have something important to tell you. It's urgent." Delegate Meireles summoned Fernanda and Ricardo for questioning on Sunday, March 25th. Both confirmed the public fight but denied any involvement. Fernanda claimed that after the incident, she went home with her husband and had no further contact. "Yes, I was furious," she stated, "but to do something to her, I would never." Ricardo, for his part, provided a solid alibi for Friday night, a business dinner with 5 clients who confirmed his presence from 7 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. "I made a terrible mistake," Ricardo admitted nervously. "It was a moment of weakness that destroyed my marriage. I told her we had to move on." An aspect that caught the investigators' attention was Mariana's relationship history. Background checks revealed that in the last 5 years, she had been involved with at least 3 other married men, with each relationship ending contentiously. One former lover had even filed for a protective order against her, alleging harassment. A week after the disappearance, the investigation took an unexpected turn. A motel employee came forward with a small agenda Mariana had left behind in the room. The agenda contained what appeared to be a detailed plan to blackmail Ricardo. The notes described specific sums of money and mentioned the existence of compromising videos stored on a USB drive, enough material to destroy his career and marriage. This discovery sent investigators back to Mariana's apartment. After a meticulous search, forensics found a black USB drive hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of Crime and Punishment on her living room bookshelf. The contents confirmed their suspicions. Dozens of intimate photos and videos of Ricardo, along with audio recordings of him discussing confidential business dealings, including potential fraud in public contracts. In parallel, an analysis of regional security cameras provided a crucial lead. A camera at a pharmacy 3 blocks away captured Mariana getting into a black car at 7:52 p.m. that Friday. It was clear she entered the vehicle willingly. "This is the last image we have of her," the delegate explained. "The vehicle headed toward the north side of the city, but we lost its trail after a few kilometers." A neighbor then reported hearing a heated argument from Mariana's apartment on Friday afternoon, involving an aggressive male voice. However, the building's intercom logs showed no registered visitors for her, deepening the mystery. After 2 weeks of intensive searching yielded no results, the case began to go cold. 3 months later, on June 18, 2018, the investigation suffered a grim turn. Fishermen found a female body partially submerged on the bank of the Capibaribe River. DNA tests confirmed the worst. It was Mariana Coelho dos Santos. The autopsy revealed the cause of death was strangulation, which likely occurred 48 to 72 hours after she disappeared. Restraint marks on her wrists suggested she had been held captive before being murdered. The discovery transformed a missing person case into a homicide investigation. The focus initially returned to Ricardo and Fernanda, but a new witness came forward with information that completely redirected the investigation. Carlos Eduardo Silveira, a private security guard, decided to speak up. On the night of the disappearance, around 8:30 p.m., I was on my patrol when I saw a black car stop on the deserted street behind the condominium where I work, he reported. 2 men got out carrying something heavy wrapped in a tarp. I thought it was strange, but they looked dangerous, so I kept my distance. Carlos Eduardo's description matched the black car from the pharmacy footage. He had managed to jot down a partial license plate. The first three characters were K, A, D. This information, though incomplete, allowed investigators to cross-reference data and identify 7 possible vehicles. One of them, a black Chevrolet Cruze, belonged to Leonardo Valladares, an ex-boyfriend with whom Mariana had ended a tumultuous relationship 8 months before she vanished. Leonardo hadn't been an initial suspect, as he was supposedly living in Sao Paulo, but a check of his history revealed a prior record for domestic assault. Furthermore, airline records confirmed he had flown to Recife 5 days before Mariana's disappearance and returned to Sao Paulo the following Sunday, the exact window in which forensics believed the body had been disposed of. Based on this evidence, the police obtained search and seizure warrants for Leonardo's residence in Sao Paulo and for his mother's apartment in Recife, where he had stayed during his visit. A search of Leonardo's Sao Paulo residence uncovered what appeared to be a diary. Its pages were filled with deep resentment toward Mariana, detailing violent fantasies of revenge. At his mother's apartment in Recife, police found even more damning evidence, a flash drive identical to the one from Mariana's apartment, containing copies of the same files, and remnants of gray duct tape with a pattern matching the one used to bind the victim's wrists, according to forensics. Faced with this evidence, Detective Morales requested a warrant for Leonardo Valladares' preventive detention. He was located and arrested in Sao Paulo on June 25, 2018. During interrogation, he initially denied any involvement, but after 12 hours of questioning, he finally confessed to the crime. According to his confession, Leonardo had learned of Mariana's involvement with Ricardo from mutual friends in Recife. Driven by jealousy and obsession, he returned to the city to confront her. "I just wanted to talk, to make her understand she still loved me. I never planned to hurt her," he claimed, a statement that stood in stark contrast to the evidence and the words in his own diary. Leonardo admitted to stalking Mariana for days, studying her routine. On that Friday afternoon, he gained access to her building by tailgating another resident and confronted her in her apartment. The argument escalated into physical violence when she refused to reconcile and threatened to call the police. "I lost control," he confessed. "I put my hands on her neck just to scare her, to make her listen. When I realized it, she wasn't breathing anymore." Leonardo Valladares' confession laid bare the gruesome details of Mariana's final moments. After strangling her in her own apartment, he panicked and devised a plan to conceal the crime. Using rubber gloves he found in the kitchen, he meticulously cleaned the scene to remove his fingerprints and any trace of his presence. "She had just showered. She was in a bathrobe when I arrived. That's why the clothes witnesses said she was wearing when she left the building weren't there," Leonardo explained in his deposition. "I dressed the body in the first clothes I found in the wardrobe and planned how to get her out of the apartment without raising suspicion." At approximately 7:30 p.m., Leonardo had the doorman call a taxi, pretending to be a visitor at Mariana's apartment. When the car arrived, he went down alone and dismissed it, then lingered near the building. Minutes later, he returned on foot and, using Mariana's phone, sent messages to himself to create a false alibi. Then, wearing a woman's wig and dark glasses from his backpack, he left the apartment carrying Mariana's purse and wearing a long coat, hurrying past the front desk. "The doorman was busy with another resident," he admitted. "He just nodded without looking at me properly." The disguise was enough to evade immediate recognition on the security cameras. Leonardo's plan included using Mariana's phone to create the illusion that she had left voluntarily, thereby misdirecting investigators during the crucial early hours. He deliberately walked into the view of the pharmacy's security cameras, where he was seen getting into a black car. his own vehicle, which he had strategically parked several blocks away. Leonardo revealed that he kept the body in the trunk of his car for nearly 2 days, hidden in the garage of a hotel on the west side of Recife, where he had checked in under a false name. On Sunday night, with the help of an accomplice later identified as his cousin Fabio Valadares, he transported the body to the secluded Apipucos region and discarded it on the banks of the Capibaribe River. "We chose that spot because it's isolated at night, and we knew the current would carry the body far away," confessed Fabio, who was also arrested and cooperated with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. One of the most disturbing aspects of the case was the revelation that Leonardo had gained possession of the flash drive with Ricardo's compromising material. "I knew about her affair with the married man. During our argument, she mentioned she had an insurance policy against him. After I found her dead, I searched the apartment and found the flash drive. I thought I could use it to shift suspicion to Ricardo," he confessed. Indeed, in the days following the crime, Leonardo sent anonymous messages to Ricardo, threatening to release the content if he didn't deposit 50,000 reais into a specific account. The messages stopped when Leonardo returned to Sao Paulo, fearing he would be traced. The investigation also shed light on the reason for Leonardo's obsession with Mariana. During their 8-month relationship, he had developed extremely possessive and controlling behavior. Mariana had ended the relationship after discovering he had installed hidden cameras in her apartment and spy apps on her phone. "He couldn't accept me having friends. He questioned every minute of my day. He wanted to know where I was all the time," Mariana had stated in a police report filed after the breakup, in which she requested a protective order. The request, however, was dismissed due to a lack of concrete evidence of a threat, according to the official justification. Detective Meirelles lamented that the earlier warning signs had not been enough to prevent the tragedy. "Unfortunately, we see a recurring pattern in these cases, controlling behaviors that escalate to lethal violence when the woman decides to end the relationship. The system failed to protect Mariana, even with clear alerts that she was at risk." In August 2018, Leonardo Valadares was indicted for qualified femicide, with aggravating factors of base motive, cruelty, and actions that made it impossible for the victim to defend herself. Fabio Valadares was charged with concealment of a corpse and obstruction of justice. The trial, held in March 2019, resulted in Leonardo's conviction and a sentence of 28 years in a maximum security prison. Fabio received a 5-year sentence, reduced due to his cooperation. Mariana's case sparked intense social outrage in Pernambuco, fueling debates on violence against women and failures in the protection system. Women's rights groups organized demonstrations demanding stricter enforcement of protective orders and criticizing the dismissal of Mariana's earlier request. "My daughter would still be alive if they had taken her report seriously," declared Mariana Coelho, Mariana's mother, during one of the protests. "How many more have to die before the authorities understand that threats must be treated with seriousness?" In response to public pressure, the Pernambuco Secretariat of Social Defense implemented a specific risk assessment protocol for domestic violence cases in 2020, named the Mariana Protocol. The system establishes objective criteria to identify women at high risk, ensuring priority in granting protective orders and providing constant monitoring. For Mariana's family, however, no institutional change can mend their devastating loss. Carolina, the victim's sister, became a women's rights activist and frequently shares Mariana's story in talks to young people about abusive relationships. "My sister's legacy is a warning to all women about the importance of recognizing the signs of controlling and obsessive behavior," Carolina states. Mariana was independent, professionally successful, and had a support network. Even so, she fell victim to a system that normalizes possessive jealousy and fails to adequately protect threatened women. Ricardo and Fernanda Mendonça, initially suspects in the case, rebuilt their lives after the investigation concluded. The couple underwent therapy and decided to stay together, moving to another state. The scandal of potential corporate crimes revealed in the videos on the flash drive led to an internal investigation at Ricardo's company, resulting in the dismissal of 2 directors and a review of public contracts. 4 years after Mariana's murder, her case continues to resonate in legal and social circles in Brazil. In April 2022, the Coelho family received news that the Superior Court of Justice had denied all of Leonardo Valadares's defense appeals, upholding his conviction in full. The decision was hailed as a victory against impunity in femicide cases. During this period, the implementation of the Mariana Protocol in Pernambuco yielded significant results. A 27% reduction in femicide cases in the state and a 65% increase in the granting of emergency protective orders. The model was later adopted by 8 other Brazilian states, solidifying its status as a national benchmark in public policies for the protection of women. The case also spurred important legislative changes. In November 2021, the Mariana Coelho law was passed, making risk analysis mandatory for all domestic violence reports filed in Pernambuco. The legislation provides for the creation of multidisciplinary teams in specialized police stations and sets maximum deadlines for evaluating requests for protective measures. Every legislative change represents lives that will be saved, stated State Deputy Regina Alves, who authored the bill. Mariana's story teaches us that fatal violence is usually preceded by clear signs, which, if properly interpreted and addressed by the justice system, could prevent tragic outcomes. In parallel with institutional changes, the case brought about cultural shifts in how society perceives abusive relationships. The Mariana Coelho Institute Foundation, established by Carolina and her parents in 2020, conducts lectures in schools and universities on preventing gender-based violence, recognizing controlling behaviors and the importance of a support network for vulnerable women. Before losing my daughter, I myself didn't fully grasp the severity of certain behaviors we normalize in relationships, reveals Marlene Coelho. Excessive jealousy, constant checking of a phone, gradual isolation from friends and family. These are all control tactics that can escalate to physical violence. Mariana's personal life also sparked reflections on the stigmas faced by single independent women. During the investigation, some media outlets and public opinion questioned her behavior for getting involved with committed men, as if that somehow justified or diminished the gravity of the crime. There was an attempt at moral judgment of the victim that we must firmly combat, reflects prosecutor Deborah Nascimento, who worked on the case. Regardless of Mariana's personal choices, nothing justifies the violence she suffered. We must completely separate moral issues from the fundamental right to life and safety. Detective Ronaldo Meireles, who led the investigation, published a book in 2023 detailing the case from behind the scenes. In Beyond the Evidence, the Mariana Coelho case, he discusses the challenges faced during the investigation and the lessons learned for improving investigative protocols in femicide cases. One of the most important things we learned was the need to immediately investigate the victim's history of prior relationships, especially those that ended turbulently, Meireles explains. Statistically, the period after the end of an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time for women. Mariana's story also exposed critical communication failures among different branches of the justice system. The police report she had filed months earlier requesting a protective order against Leonardo had been superficially reviewed and dismissed without any follow-up or entry into integrated systems. In response to this deficiency, the Unified Registry System for Violence Against Women was implemented in 2022, a digital platform that integrates data from police stations, the Public Prosecutor's Office, the Public Defender's Office, and the Court of Justice. The system allows any agency to immediately access a complete history of complaints, protective orders, and prior incidents, making it easier to identify behavioral patterns in high-risk situations. If this system had existed in 2018, the authorities would have identified that Leonardo posed a real threat to Mariana's life. Observes Judge Claudia Montero of the Recife Domestic Violence Court. His history of aggression against former partners combined with her reports would have triggered all the alerts in the risk protocol. In the judicial sphere, Mariana's case also set a significant precedent. In 2023, the Pernambuco Court of Justice used the case to support convictions. In 5 other femicide cases where post-breakup obsessive behavior was identified as a determining factor. The legal argument that persistent stalking constitutes an aggravating factor of base motive in femicide has since been cited in over 30 judicial decisions across the country. For Fabio Valadares, Leonardo's cousin and accomplice, the weight of his participation in the crime brought about profound changes. After serving 3 years of his sentence, part in a closed regime and part in a semi-open one, he was released in 2021 and decided to dedicate himself to rehabilitation programs for aggressors. "I took part in something terrible that I can never undo," he stated in an interview after his release. "The least I can do now is use my experience to try to prevent other men from following the same destructive path." At the time, I downplayed Leonardo's signs of obsession. I didn't take it seriously when he talked about teaching her a lesson. One of the most impactful parts of Mariana's legacy was the creation, in 2022, of Brazil's first specialized center for stalking and obsessive behavior. Located in Recife and named the Mariana Coelho Center for Violence Prevention, the institution offers both psychological and legal support for victims and awareness and intervention programs for potential aggressors. Stalking is still often romanticized in our culture, presented in movies and songs as proof of love or persistence, explains psychologist Raquel Novaes, the center's coordinator. We need to denaturalize behaviors like constantly monitoring a partner's location, checking their communications, or showing up unannounced at their appointments. These are signs of control, not affection. Statistics compiled by the Mariana Coelho Institute reveal the scale of the problem. 73% of women murdered by ex-partners in Brazil between 2017 and 2023 had reported persecutory behavior after the end of the relationship. Of these, only 31% had formally filed a complaint, and a mere 12% had obtained effective protective measures. The case also exposed the technological limitations of the system designed to protect women. In 2024, spurred by the tragedy's fallout, the government of Pernambuco implemented the Violet Alert program. This initiative provides electronic monitoring devices for aggressors and panic buttons for victims, all directly connected to the Military Police Operations Center. As the Secretary of Social Defense, Paulo Câmara, acknowledged, technology alone cannot solve the problem, but it is a fundamental tool. The program's true strength lies in its integration with rapid response protocols and specialized teams, ensuring that when a panic button is pressed, immediate intervention follows. For Ricardo and Fernanda Mendonça, who were initially caught up in the investigation, the subsequent years brought profound reflections on indirect responsibility. Though cleared of any involvement in the crime, the couple bears the weight of knowing their love triangle was the spark that put Mariana on the radar of her obsessive ex-partner. For a long time, I lived with the crushing guilt of thinking that if I hadn't gotten involved with her, Mariana might still be alive. Ricardo confessed in a rare statement for a 2023 documentary on the case. Therapy helped me understand that the only person responsible for her death was her killer. But I still carry this reflection on how our actions can trigger unforeseen consequences. Fernanda, in turn, used the traumatic experience to reshape her professional life. A law graduate, she specialized in domestic violence and now works as a volunteer lawyer at a support center for vulnerable women. When I publicly confronted Mariana that day, I was driven by the pain of betrayal, she reflects. I never imagined the scale of what would follow. Today I understand that publicly exposing intimate situations can put women at risk, especially when abusive ex-partners are lurking in the shadows. In March of 2025, on the 7th anniversary of Mariana's murder, her family organized a series of events to keep her memory alive and continue the conversation about violence against women. A walk through the center of Recife drew more than 5,000 people, all dressed in white and carrying signs with messages like, "For Mariana and for all of us," and "Recognize the signs before it's too late." During this period, Leonardo Valadares, serving his sentence at the Professor Barreto Campello Penitentiary, requested a transfer to a semi-open prison regime, citing good behavior and sincere remorse. The request triggered an immediate mobilization by the Coelho family and women's rights organizations, which gathered over 100,000 signatures against the appeal. "We cannot allow the system to reward someone who coldly planned a femicide and has never shown real remorse with partial freedom," argued Mariana Coelho during a public hearing. "My sister doesn't get a second chance. She won't be coming home after 7 years. Her murderer does not deserve that privilege." The judicial decision, published on April 18, 2025, denied the parole request. The ruling was based on psychological reports indicating Leonardo's persistent narcissistic personality traits and a low capacity for empathy. The case set an important precedent, marking the first time in the state's history that psychological aspects specifically related to gender violence were decisive in denying penitentiary benefits. In parallel, the Mariana Coelho Institute expanded its work into education, developing teaching materials on healthy relationships and violence prevention for high schools. The Love Without Possessing project, initially implemented in 50 schools, has already reached over 15,000 teenagers and has been recognized by the Ministry of Education as a model initiative. We need to teach from an early age that love is not control, that excessive jealousy is not proof of affection, and that respect for autonomy is fundamental in any relationship, explains Mariana Coelho, the project's coordinator. Many young people replicate toxic patterns they absorb from the culture without realizing the risks. The case's impact also reached the national legislature. In January 2025, the National Congress approved amendments to the Brazilian Penal Code, criminalizing obsessive persecution, or stalking, with stricter penalties and specific aggravating factors when committed by an ex-partner. The new legislation, informally dubbed the Mariana Law by the press, carries sentences of 2 to 5 years for severe cases of stalking, with increased penalties for violations of protective orders. This is a significant step forward in recognizing that stalking behaviors are not mere inconveniences, but real threats to the safety and lives of women, celebrated Senator Marta Suplicy, one of the bill's sponsors. Mariana's case showed us that we must act preventively before the violence escalates to its most extreme form. Mariana's story crossed borders, becoming a subject of study at international universities. In 2024, researchers from the University of Barcelona included the case in a comparative study on women's protection protocols. highlighting the Mariana Protocol as a model public policy born from the lessons of a real tragedy. The difference in the Pernambuco model is that it was built from a detailed analysis of a concrete systemic failure, precisely identifying the breaking points in the protection network. Observed Spanish sociologist Carmen Vidal, the study's coordinator. This resulted in practical, objective measures, not just generic guidelines. For Delegate Ronaldo Morales, now retired and dedicated to lecturing on femicide investigations, the case permanently transformed investigative protocols. Before, when a woman disappeared after a romantic conflict, the initial assumption was often that she had run away voluntarily, he explains. Today, we immediately investigate partners and ex-partners, especially those with a history of controlling behavior. In her last public statement during an event in February 2025, Mariana Coelho synthesized her daughter's legacy. Mariana didn't just die because of a man who couldn't accept her right to say no. She also died because of a system that failed to protect her when she asked for help. Her death taught us that every ignored complaint, every minimized sign, every denied protective order can cost a life. We cannot bring Mariana back, but her legacy saves women every single day. The story of Mariana Coelho dos Santos continues to reverberate as a turning point in the history of the fight against gender-based violence in Brazil. Her tragic death became a symbol, a warning, and a catalyst for tangible change. It demonstrated that even from the most painful circumstances, lessons can be drawn to save lives and transform societies. For every woman protected by the Mariana Protocol, for every teenager who learns to recognize the signs of abuse through the educational project, for every victim of stalking shielded by the new legislation, Mariana's legacy is renewed and strengthened. It proves that her story did not end on that March night in 2018, but lives on in the fight for a world where women can live without fear.